Hi, I'm Tony Joe, and I've been a realtor in Victoria, British Columbia for more than 25 years. I'm joining you today from the British Columbia Real Estate Association's offices in downtown Vancouver. BCREA is the voice of BC's realtors, providing advocacy, ongoing education, economics analysis, and standard legal forms. Today, we're here for the second in a series of conversations on cannabis, a web series brought to you by BCREA to help consumers, realtors, and other real estate professionals get a better understanding of the risks of growing cannabis at home. I'm joined today by Grant Haddock to talk about cannabis as it relates to stratas. Grant, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me here today. I'm the principal of Haddock & Company, a law firm that the offices in North Vancouver and Victoria. We're known as housing lawyers. We do a lot of housing work. We're working a lot with strata corporations these days, with landlords, also with non-profit organizations such as BC Housing Funded Groups. We even work with manufactured home parks. We also have a big part of our practice is construction law, mostly in asset protection for our clients and their buildings, roofs, envelopes, and so on.
Great, so you're the right person to talk to on this topic.
I hope so, yes.
All right, let's get to the question. So Grant, what kind of powers do strata corporations have to limit recreational use and growing of cannabis?
Well, strata corporations' powers really, their genesis is in their bylaws. And realtors should know about the bylaws. It's something they're going to have to look at when they're advising clients. So a strata corporation can prevent cannabis smoking within their bylaws, as long as they're properly passed. So what they would normally do, what I'm advising my clients is to pass a no smoking bylaw. People are finding that they're getting better value for their lots if they're a no smoking building. So I can remember the days in the early 90s where there was a development in North Vancouver where I live, where it was billed as the first no smoking strata corporation. And there was a great outcry because people at that time thought, I'm not going to be able to sell my strata lot because it's no smoking. Yeah. And that's what the realtors are going to be looking for when you're advising your clients. If you have a no smoking bylaw, that includes no smoking cannabis.
Yeah,
so
that's the question.
That's the question.
So Grant, what kind of powers do strata corporations have to limit use and growing of medical cannabis?
Well, that's a human rights code issue. So the right to smoke medical cannabis before the cannabis became legal was under a specific federal act that allowed people to access it for medical purposes. And in certain situations, a strata corporation, even if they had a no smoking bylaw, would have to allow a person to smoke cannabis in their unit if they could prove they medically needed it to treat their ailment, whatever it might be.
So what you're saying is even if there is a bylaw restricting smoking in the building and if there is an occupant that needs it for medicinal purposes, that medicinal purpose overrules the bylaws?
Yeah. So if there's a law that affects a person with disability detrimentally, then the code's going to override that. And so what they do with the Human Rights Tribunal, they say, well, this person needs to smoke the medical cannabis, and a no smoking bylaw is invalid against that person only. So you got to make sure, I've seen situations where they'll say, well, one person is smoking so the whole building wants to smoke. Well, that's not going to happen because the rest of the people don't get exemptions for that sort of thing.
To what extent can strata corporations limit the growing of cannabis in their units?
Well, they can use their bylaws to prevent the growing of cannabis in their units. Currently, under the new legislation, owners can grow up to 4 plants in their units. Smart strata corporations are saying no to growing, and they can easily pass a bylaw. If you're a realtor, you're going to be looking for newer bylaws because it's a recent development and strata corporations were racing to pass no growing bylaws. So it'll be something they've done in the last year or two.
So were there restrictions in a strata on the use of medicinal cannabis, where the bylaw might say no smoking, but it is allowed per the Human Rights Code, right? Mm-hmm. What about the cases where that medicinal user might want to grow their own cannabis?
That's an interesting question.
If the strata has a no growing bylaw.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It hasn't been dealt with yet because, of course, everything's all brand new for us. My response to that is probably not allowed to do that because now medical or medical grade cannabis is available legally. So
what could a realtor do if they're showing a unit and there's a smell of cannabis in the building?
Well, they could first of all find out from their client if it's a problem for the client. Some clients are very sensitive to such things. They might have asthma or they might have children. So as a realtor, you'll want to know more about your client, what they're prepared to put up with. Maybe
or they might enjoy it.
They might enjoy it. They might be cannabis smokers themselves and go, wow, welcome to the community.
Yes.
So it could be a good thing, but a bad thing. But if you do smell cannabis or a lot of it at the property when you're looking around, and doing your due diligence on the property, think about what you want to talk to your client about.
So Grant, in your experience and what you've been seeing in your practice, now that there's legalization in place, what kind of changes are you seeing with stratas?
You know, it's really funny. There hasn't really been a big difference.
Okay.
And it's because in Vancouver, Victoria, maybe all of British Columbia, we had a cannabis culture existing before this became legal. In Toronto, my colleagues would come to Vancouver and say, what is with your city? People are smoking weed everywhere. And it was true. So what we had in Vancouver, Victoria, elsewhere, we already had a band of responsible cannabis users, if I could call them that. They were doing it illegally, but they weren't in anyone's face. I haven't got any calls since this became legal, like to enforce things or to stop it or get injunctions. It's because people were responsible for it and they're being responsible after. So as realtors, it's not all doom and gloom here. You're not going out there looking for the disaster that you think might have happened because the laws changed. In British Columbia or Vancouver, it appears people are being responsible about that.
There's a lot of confusion out there with the legalization of cannabis. So where should a realtor turn to get support for these kinds of questions?
I think the first place they should go is to their managing broker, because they might have some ideas, they might already have some resources or policies in place. Then you should go to your support groups next, and that would include BCREA. This organization is putting together a knowledge base. They're collecting information such as what we're doing here today and this whole series on cannabis. Great resource for realtors to go to if they have questions. There's other groups too that aren't associated with the real estate sales, such as Landlord BC, representing landlords. A lot of great knowledge there. An outfit in London, Ontario called the Canadian Federation of Apartment Associations. And they're a great website for that kind of information. And the nonprofit housing sector, such as BC Nonprofit, Co-op Housing Federation of BC. Lots of good information there.
Yeah. And insurance companies too.
You could go to insurers as well, because there's a question if your clients want to grow, whether or not, and if it's allowed in the property, whether or not that's covered by insurance. So as a realtor, you never want to interpret insurance policies. As a realtor, you're going to say to your client, well, go talk to your broker. And don't you as a realtor talk to the broker and try to interpret what they said. The best thing to do is send them directly to the expert and let them discuss it.
Great. So it's one thing to grow one plant in a house versus rewiring an entire unit, for instance, and using chemicals to grow the allowed 4. So could strata corporations be held responsible for damages that might incur from unit owners?
I don't think so. What you do inside your strata lot is your business. And don't forget, now growing and smoking is legal. So you would be undertaking a legal activity at your own risk. So say, for instance, someone was winemaking in their unit and they got the pressure up too high and it blew up and they caused all this damage inside the unit. Well, that would be for them to deal with.
So what are risks realtors face when it comes to advising clients who want to sell and have been growing medical cannabis?
Well, there's a standard property disclosure statement that they have to deal with. And one of the check boxes on there is, are you aware of the growth of, I think it still says marijuana, anywhere within the unit or anywhere on the property? And so you're going to have to check that box off. The issue you have to talk to your client about is that that box doesn't make any distinguishment between 4 plants, which is legal, and 100, which is not. So is grow up or not grow up? And there's no way to get around that right now. Maybe those forms will change now that laws change, but right now it's tick that box off. The other thing is you got to advise your client that that's going to cause a loss, probably. People are not very interested in places that they think might have been a grow-op. And you can't tell whether it is or not because the box just gets a tick, that's it. And you could be losing anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 on the sale price just because you ticked off a box about marijuana.
So what does a seller have to disclose about cannabis use in the building? So for instance, if the seller's neighbors are smoking day after day, does the seller need to disclose that?
No, I don't think they do. First of all, it would be obvious if you're coming in at an open house or if the realtor
Can smell it.
can smell it, they're going to know what's happening. It's a legal activity, and so you wouldn't normally disclose to someone that someone's undertaking a legal activity. It would be akin to someone playing their piano, which is allowed for the most part. So they don't think they need to disclose that because it's normal now.
So Grant, when a strata implements a no smoking bylaw, does that include vaping as well?
No, it doesn't. And a lot of stratas aren't thinking about that. And actually, general public's not thinking about that. Again, it's something in British Columbia that is quite popular, vaping, but non-vapers find it annoying. And I've had to deal with situations in stratas where we had to go to the Civil Resolution Tribunal to stop people from vaping. So we have a specialized vaping bylaw that we, along with the no smoking, no growing bylaws that we advise them to put in, we also say, well, throw in your no vaping bylaw as well.
Okay. So we can't just assume that if there's a non-smoking building that means no vaping. That has to be, that is separate.
It is separate.
Yeah.
If you saw the bylaw, you'd see there'd be a definition of smoking, and there's also a definition of vaping and what vaping is.
Wow.
It's with an electronic device.
Okay. So Grant, is there anything else realtors should know?
I think they should know just know big picture. Cannabis is legal. It's here to stay. Secondly, it's not such a big deal. Not in this province anyway. We had a cannabis culture in this province for years.
Yes, and known for that.
And known for that.
Yeah.
And people were responsible with their cannabis, and they're responsible today. And the last thing is know your client. Know what they want, know what they don't want. Check the bylaws of the strata corporation to see if they're meeting your client's needs. If they don't like smoke, look for no smoking building. If they like cannabis, doesn't matter. It's legal. Find a building that doesn't have any of those restrictions.
Good to know. Thank you, Grant, for coming and providing your expertise. This has been another episode of Conversations on Cannabis here at BCREA. Stay tuned for future episodes.